Good evening, I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story, the digital platform that does a deep dive into the big stories of the day. On the program today, what else but COVID? India finally has the approvals for a third vaccine, but the numbers of the cases are not looking good at all. As we go into our second wave, once again, we're looking at the highest single-day spike in the country since the onset of the pandemic in 2020. That number is now well past breaching even the 1 lakh mark. It's now closer to 1.7 lakh cases. You can see the exact number on your screen. Those are scary numbers there, and they're also reporting a higher R0, which is the viral load, and the contagion quotient, which the experts on our panel can better explain. But we're also looking at recovery. 75,000 people and more were discharged from hospitals in the last 24 hours, but the hospitals are heaving under the weight of more and more cases, and 904 deaths have been reported in the last 24 hours alone. All of this, of course, is happening as the vaccination program carries on, and as we said, there is finally approval for a third vaccine, the Sputnik, but is that enough? Or should India now be looking very quickly at importing vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, what have you, instead of asking for bridging trials? Let's introduce our experts on the program today. You can see Dr. Mohan Joshi. He's been at the front line of the COVID battle. The head of Sion Hospital in Mumbai is with us. We have also Dr. Harsh Mahajan, who's of course also been at the helm through 2020 and 2021 of the testing available for COVID. And that is, by the way, a space that is also now facing acute pressure. And we're also joined by Dr. Rajesh Parikh of the Jaslok Hospital and the author of two very, very significant research-oriented books on the COVID crisis. Welcome. I don't think you could have three better experts on the program. Let me start by bringing Dr. Joshi into the screen now. Dr. Joshi, I want to start by asking you, what is the situation in Mumbai? What are you short of? And what is the bed situation? What is the oxygen situation? What is the vaccination situation? What is the Remdesivir situation?
At places, the oxygen is in scarce. Some of the private hospitals are not getting adequate amount of oxygen. In municipal corporation and government hospitals, the oxygen is fairly good. There is no shortage at this moment. However, the need for the oxygen has increased significantly, and therefore the manufacturers are facing tough time in terms of manufacturing or getting the oxygen produced, and there is also a small problem of delivering it to the respective hospitals. That is the situation of oxygen. The beds are falling short. At many places, many patients are waiting, and the beds are falling short, and especially the ICU beds are falling short. People come from various places to Mumbai to look at that they will get the best possible medical care, and even in corona pandemic. And therefore, the number of patients who are also coming from outside neighboring areas in municipal corporation zone, we are facing little problem. However, by and large, we are able to admit everybody. May not be immediately on a ICU bed or a critical care bed, but we are able to admit the patient and give necessary treatment. Government and the municipal hospitals by and large have procured good amount of Remdesivir. So there is no shortage at this moment in my hospital as well as in any municipal hospitals. However, in the community, there is a shortage of Remdesivir because probably the production which is required to be done is 10 folds higher than the actual production. And therefore, they are facing problem. Plus, the companies are restricting Remdesivir sale through a particular dealer. So that causes a lot of problem from one end of the city of Mumbai, and then he has to travel 30-40 kilometers to reach to that particular dealer. And this has been a practice in all these expensive drugs, and I don't know why, but maybe that they would like to deliver through one person, and that creates a problem. So that is one of the problem, besides that the need has increased significantly.
Dr. Joshi, what I'm hearing from you is that actually government hospitals in Mumbai today are in a better condition than private hospitals, because Dr. Parikh was just telling me that at Jaslok, where he is, there is actually a waiting line of about 200 people. Now, this could also be that a number of people are looking for private wards in private hospitals, that there is a class dimension that is playing out here, or that supplies have been prioritized in government hospitals. Which one is it, according to you, Dr. Joshi?
Yeah, the government hospitals are taking care of mass number of people. We are having thousands and thousands of beds either in the Sayan Nair KM or in various jumbo facilities, whereas minuscule amount of bed, not even to the reaching to thousand, are available in all the private hospitals. The private hospital, they can, we when the patient waits in our door for a day, for an hour or so, we try to accommodate the patient somewhere or the other. Whereas in private hospital there is a lot of waiting list. There is you can see that X room is not available, Y cot is not available, so the
Yeah,
patient will be
yeah,
admitted. So
yeah.
that kind of concern we don't have, because we treat poor patients and we treat masses. So
Absolutely.
any on the masses, there is no houseful board at any given time in our hospital.
Okay, before I go to Dr. Mahajan and Dr. Parikh, I just want to ask you, Dr. Joshi, what is the one biggest difference you're finding between the second wave and the first wave in terms of symptoms? The KEM hospital dean, Dr. Deshmukh, was saying that the symptoms are quite different. They're much more neurological, much more sort of gastrocentric symptoms this time. They're quite different. Are you finding that as well?
See, the symptoms are basically same of a viral infection. Now what happens, every patient who comes to the hospital, we try to screen. That means that a patient of stroke comes to the hospital, we screen. And when he becomes positive, we say that stroke is the symptom. The symptoms are mainly, this is a respiratory virus. This is a virus which infects the lung. So therefore, fever, prodromal symptoms, body ache, general toxemia, weakness, loss of smell, loss of appetite, and fever. These are the main symptoms, arthralgia. And there is some evidence to say that there is a thrombogenic activity is increasing. Like what happens in the lung, the similar things happen somewhere else also in the brain or heart. And therefore, the stroke patients are more, or the incidence of myocardial infarcts are more. That is what is the postulation. There is no concrete study to say that, but this is what is the scenario. And now we have got change of climate, we have got temperature which is rising in the city. So therefore, any other symptoms which the patients have, and along with that they have corona, so
Yeah.
therefore we can say that there is a symptomatology which is different. One important thing, that the infectivity of this strain of virus is much more, because way back in the first wave we never saw that the whole family got positive. Here one person becomes positive, the whole family eventually becomes positive, and the neighboring people become positive. So the infectivity of the virus is more. The lethalness of the virus is a little less. That was the postulation in the beginning. But now we are seeing several serious patients who are needing ventilatory support, who are needing high liters of oxygen. So therefore, that also cannot be, whatever was the postulation in the beginning of the wave is not true today, right now.
I was just
We
going to ask you, because in the beginning you told me the infectivity is higher, but the lethality is lower.
the perceptions are changing honestly, and this is what I would like to honestly agree on a public platform and on a digital platform, that what I said probably 10 days ago or 15 days ago is changing now, because we are needing a lot of ICU beds and patients are going into significant respiratory failure. Okay.
Well, that's a chilling wake-up call. And I want to, of course, this is not a story about one state or the other. It is a story about India. And we spoke about Remdesivir. These are the lines coming in from Gujarat. Those are people queuing up just to buy Remdesivir injections. And I don't know if this is recommended. I don't know if this is panic buying. I don't know if there's hoarding, if there's a black market. Of course, as Dr. Joshi says, that you need 10 times more remdesivir production than there is in the market right now. But Dr. Mahajan, Remdesivir is not the only dimension of the health system that is under severe pressure. The testing space, where Mahajan Laboratories is very active, it is facing an acute pressure and a demand-supply mismatch. Suddenly, everybody wants to get tested. Can you speak to what's happening in the testing space?
See, there's no doubt that from doing just a few hundred tests, even till 4 weeks ago, there's been a sudden spurt in the demand. And at Mahajan Imaging, we were actually able to give reports even till a month ago within 6 to 9 hours, even though the cutoff was 24 hours. But with this spurt, what is happening that, your capacity is limited. And capacity of all labs put together in a city is limited. And there is a huge surge in numbers. So what is happening is, patients at times have to go from one center to the other, even to get the test done. We used to have home collection. That more or less is stopped now because our phlebotomists are so busy in the centers themselves. And what I would say is that even at the peak capacity, we were able to, or peak demand, we were able to meet that demand with what the labs had to offer. But today, it's become very, very difficult. And to be able to give a report in 6 or 8 hours has become nearly impossible. 24 hours also. I know that in certain states, this figure of 24 hours has gone up to 48 hours. Also, what is happening that larger labs, which are in multiple states, because there is so much demand, some of them have stopped picking up samples in those states where the capped rates are very, very low, like 400 or 500 rupees, and they are concentrating more on providing service to those states where the rates, though capped, are higher. So we are facing a dire situation as far as RT-PCR testing is done.
Yeah, and what would you statistically quantify, Dr. Mahajan, as the demand supply mismatch right now?
I think it's very difficult to quantify that. What I can say, and you saw it yourself today.
Yeah, I spent all day. I finally tested at your lab, but I had to call about 10 laboratories to test. I couldn't get an RT-PCR test anywhere, and I had to get one because I need to fly to Bombay, and I can't get in without taking a test.
So that is evidence in itself, but exact quantification, I cannot give you a percentage as to how much.
You said some labs have stopped testing because of the cap on the price is very low. Can you elaborate on that?
See, I'll elaborate. In Gurgaon, which adjoins Delhi, the rates are lower than what they are in Delhi. So labs which pick up samples, say a lab can do 2,000 tests a day, and it's able to get those samples in Delhi. Why would it go to Gurgaon and pick up samples where it is at a much lower rate? So this is a practical thing. It's a reality. It's happening.
Yeah. Dr. Parikh, while Dr. Joshi has given us a grim warning about the fact that his own appraisal of the lethality of the virus, he now feels the need to review that opinion. We're also seeing very, very disturbing images that are coming from smaller hospitals. You know, what might be happening in smaller cities, and we saw this happening at the peak of the pandemic in some of the government hospitals in Mumbai as well, is that people are having to lie on the floor. There are not enough beds. This is not coming from any one of your hospitals. This is coming, as I said, from smaller hospitals. But even Bombay's hospitals went through this, and no one's judging here because there is just a flood of people looking for beds. You were mentioning when we were talking earlier, Dr. Parikh, that at Jaslok there are at least 200 people waiting in line to get a bed. What is your research showing you in terms of the second wave, and what are private hospitals most lacking? And do you even think we should be encouraging regular hospitalization, or should we be now going back to jumbo facilities?
Oh, you've got it absolutely right. You know what's happening, Barkha, this time around, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me. People are rushing into hospitals when they really don't need to be in a hospital. To a large extent, in the vast majority of people, even when the RT-PCR test is positive, this can be managed at home just as well as it can be managed in oxygen. I'm not talking about severe patients who need ventilators and oxygen. The other myth we need to set right once and for all. I mean, I was pained at looking at those long queues, people waiting for Remdesivir. They're analogous, to queues that wait outside temples, hoping to pray and that something will happen. The Solidarity trial, which was a WHO trial, a massive trial across the world, gave what appeared to be the final word last November, that Remdesivir is not effective, even in moderate and severe cases of COVID-19. Now, recently, there has been a US study which seems to indicate some efficacy in severe patients. But, for that study, there have been multiple studies which indicate that it is not effective. So, at best, one might have a disclaimer that we don't know yet. At worst, we claim that this is the only thing we have, so take it. And, Barkha, you've been following this so intimately. You know the story of hydroxychloroquine. We talked about it, at the time when it was at its peak. And Barkha, you accused me of being cynical when I said that, no, you said I am sounding cynical. You didn't say I was cynical, a slight difference. But
so you're actually saying this mad scramble to get Remdesivir is not needed. Because I want Dr. Joshi and Dr. Mahajan to respond to this. You're saying that this is panic and its effectiveness is in doubt, according to you.
Not only that, I'm saying that what it is providing is a relief for desperation, and it is providing hope, which is not entirely justified. But I'd like to hear my colleagues' opinions.
Dr. Joshi, do you agree on how often are you ending up using Remdesivir? And do you agree with Dr. Parikh that it's more almost psychological hope for despair than actually being effective? What are you finding clinically, Dr. Joshi, on Remdesivir?
The task force chief of Maharashtra state made a statement, who's a very senior colleague of mine, and he made a statement way back. This is an empirical statement, that the Remdesivir was going in his body and the virus was going out. That is what he felt. But forget about it. Remdesivir is a virucidal drug. That is one thing, sure about it. It's the trials which are there, which are engineered in a lighter patient, which are engineered a lot of, using a lot of ethical etiquettes and all that. So the trials, how you engineer the trials, and you need to have those kinds of truly randomized trials. So, and when you know that something is going to be helpful, and philosophically or by way of mechanism of action, certain drug is going to be effective, I am very sure that you would like to use it, and a lot of people get benefited when they are given Remdesivir. Now, not to give Remdesivir to a group of people who are supposed to be on Remdesivir, in presence of Remdesivir which is available, would be criminal. So, frankly to say that we cannot assess, the engineering of the trial is such that it gives some conclusion that is about safety, that is about efficacy, and so many patients are recovered, and we choose those patients who are young, who are mildly affected. We do not usually try in patients who are very old. So this is the fallacy of so-called as trials. But unless you quote trials, you are not
But
academic.
anecdotally, what do you find? Forget the trials, forget the studies, or you
I
are the
would use
doctors treating
remdesivir.
patients.
I would tell if I develop corona, I would tell my friend to use remdesivir for me. I would use it for my wife and for my children. My son, who had developed corona, had received 5 injections of remdesivir, and we are using remdesivir in all moderate cases of corona. There is no doubt. Philosophically and by way of drug action, it is a virucidal drug. It is supposed to reduce the number of viruses in the body, and that will help to sort of prevent damage.
Two very different opinions there. Dr. Mahajan, are you wanting to jump in with your opinion?
Okay.
Sorry, let me just unmute you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I said I will not be an arbiter because I'm not competent to be one. But
Yeah.
what I can say is that if we look at the evidence which came and which led to the use of remdesivir, it really said that from 14 days, you will recover in 11 days. And it didn't say much about, whether it'll save lives. It wasn't used in the serious situation at all. And what Dr. Parikh has very rightly said, there is a recent study which shows that even in the serious situation, it may be useful. However, as Dr. Joshi points out, it really became a routine. It became a reflex action that if someone is admitted in hospital with moderate disease or severe disease, you have to give, steroids. And so how do we give steroids without cover of something? And that's what remdesivir has actually become. It is a virucidal, a weak one as far as COVID-19 or corona is concerned, but it is in use, and it would be a brave, doctor who, in the current situation, would not use it. How much
Fair
it's
enough.
having effect, that we have evidence that it has very, very little effect.
So, treatments are experimental. There've been a mix and match of steroids, of remdesivir, of oxygen, of crocin. So we don't actually have a cure. And that takes us to vaccinations. We right now have to go back to preventives and not therapeutics. We have to go back, talk about preventives and not cures. Sputnik has the approval, but we don't know when it will be available. Now, there have been ethical questions. I'll start with you, Dr. Mahajan, then Dr. Joshi, then Dr. Parikh. We've had some government representatives saying, how can you not have vaccine equity? How can you have the rich being able to access one vaccine and the poor having to pay for another? And I'm saying in an ideal world, yes, that would have mattered. But given what we're looking at, given the graph, don't we need to start importing Pfizer and Moderna? Should we suspend the bridging trials that we have been so adamant on? Dr. Mahajan, I'll start with you.
See, I've been very clear, Barkha, and I've said this since several months, that the more people who get vaccinated, the better it is. I mean, it's not rocket science, because the vaccinated person is not only, saving himself, he's also adding and saving others who are around him, because the vaccine does prevent some infection. It does prevent some transmission. How much, we are still not clear.
Right.
So, and I also believe in equity. The government has one program in which the rich and the poor are put on the same pedestal, and it's based on, the age groups and prioritization that has been done by the government. And that's, I think that worked very, very well. But I also feel at the same time that if I can afford a vaccine, why should I get it free? Why should I get it for 150 rupees if I can afford to pay 500 or 1,000? We've been paying 2,500 for the flu vaccine. No one complained then. And here is a pandemic situation where you want to cover as much of the population as possible. And if it is possible for certain private or government entities to import, other vaccines, be it Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, whatever, which have been given, certification in other parts of the world, it should be permitted. And if I can afford it, I should get it, as long as I'm not snatching it away from a poor man's arm. So I'm
But suppose
only
there are
adding to
complications.
the establishment.
I said this to someone in government, and the person in government said, "What if there's a reaction to Pfizer and Moderna? Will the government be responsible if these vaccines are imported?" Dr. Joshi, do you want to take that? Do you believe that it is time to suspend the demand for bridging trials for vaccines that have not had those trials in India?
No. I fully agree that vaccines like Covaxin and Covishield, who have been given emergency permission to use, that means that without adequate optimal number of cases or trials, legitimate routine trials, we have given them emergency permission. So such emergency permission may be also given to other vaccines. But the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccines, some of the vaccines need to be refrigerated at minus 70 degree. So they are not truly, it is not possible that a large number of people can be vaccinated by this, just sheerly because of, the storage, characteristics of these vaccines. So that is one concern. And the second thing is probably that the Indian vaccine companies in the initial period thought that they would be able to, manufacture adequate and optimal amount of dosage. So therefore, the government is in favor of using Indian vaccines. That's all. But for charging patients, I mean, I have no this thing why they have kept it. Probably they would like to, at many times, some reason that they would like to not allow any extra money to be collected or something
How
like
are
that.
you doing? How are you doing on vaccine supplies in your hospital?
At times there is shortage. At times there is shortage. We would like to run the vaccines in 2 shifts, but sometimes we are supposed to curtail for a few more hours.
Yeah.
So that is the scenario. There is a definitive small shortage, maybe 10% or 20% more we could vaccinate.
So
if we
I
get-
will tell you that I have interviewed elderly people who have not been able to receive their scheduled second dose because the vaccination centers they've gone to just simply don't have them. Rajesh Parikh, you were saying Jaslok certainly is running short of vaccines, just like it's running short of beds. What should be done? This Sputnik approval, the gap between the approval and the production is still a critical, couple of months at least, if I'm not wrong?
Absolutely. But just before I get onto the Sputnik 5 story, that's a story in itself, if I may make quick 3 bullet points. One, I think we will have to change our vocabulary now to talk of viruses rather than virus, because the mutant strains of what was the original virus have now become distinct entities in themselves. Some of them are more infective, some of them are even more lethal, some of them even dodge antibodies, and some of them even do not respond to. I think homogenize all these different mutants into one type is, I think, a scientific error. Second, the virus does not, to the best of our knowledge, differentiate between organs. It doesn't love our lungs any more than it loves our brain or our heart or the kidneys or the GI tract. What it heads into are the ACE2 receptors, because the spike protein acts like a key which unlocks the ACE2 receptor to get access to the body. It so happens that the lungs have a preponderance of ACE2 receptors, but there are ACE2 receptors in the kidney, they are in the GI tract, they are in the brain, and therefore, again, you're not going to get one homogeneous profile of this illness. You're going to get different types of illnesses. Third, nobody ever accused in the history of medicine a pharmaceutical for engineering clinical research so as to give data which works against the drug. The gold standard done everywhere is the randomized controlled trial. It is stratified. It is cuts across different ages. I think if someone were to look at the details of the Solidarity trial or look at the data in greater detail, it would be very clear that many of these trials have been conducted properly. Nobody has questioned their methodology, and more important, their meta-analysis. Now, meta-analysis put different trials together. On all of this, the word on Remdesivir is not as strong as that of the senior colleague who says that he takes Remdesivir and the virus runs away. seeing it. So scientific data is one thing, and one's faith and belief and religion are different. Coming now to Sputnik 5,
Yeah.
Barkha, and I have a strong feeling you're going to accuse me of being cynical again. But please understand, Sputnik 5 has been made by the Gamaleya Institute in Moscow, an institute that has been there since 1891. This institute does not rank even amongst the top 50 science institutes in Russia, leave alone the top 50 institutes in the world. It's in a nondescript three-story building in Moscow. It had made a claim initially, which was completely debunked, of having made a successful vaccine against Ebola. The WHO debunked it. The vaccine, unlike like its namesake, Sputnik 5, got government boosters. The institute is a part of the Ministry of Defense. And well, they may have got it right. I hope they have got it right this time. But the point I'm trying to make, Barkha, it is worth the wait to look at peer-reviewed data, to look at phase 3 data. I cannot understand any situation in which emergency authorization supersedes a protocol when never in the history of mankind, other than what happened with Covaxin, has approval been given prior to phase 3 data.
But there are other vaccines globally where those trials have been met. Pfizer, Moderna,
Yes.
J&J, to name 3.
Let's welcome them. Let's welcome them all.
So you're not happy with Sputnik. You're not happy with Sputnik.
Let me not put it that way. I'm not persuaded. I've followed the Sputnik story now for a year and a quarter. I've looked deeply at Gamaleya Institute. We've written about it, incidentally, in the vaccine book. Not that I'm trying to plug the book, but we've written extensively about Sputnik 5 and about the Gamaleya Institute. And, the government did accelerate it. There were even questions of the way the trial was conducted. So there are unanswered questions, Barkha. I am not.
But what do we do at this point? You see, the point is, it's like Dr. Mahajan, it's like AstraZeneca has gone through, the set of anxieties globally. Europe has chosen in some parts of it to give a different second vaccine. So there's a mix and match going on. UK has chosen to give under 30s, an alternative. So everywhere, there is no perfect medicine, there is no perfect vaccine possibly that will be created at the speed at which it's needed. Actually, in that way, Pfizer and Moderna are rating the best in efficacy, have met all the trials, but they can't be suitable for a country like ours. So there is a problem with, sorry, Rajesh, you wanted to say something? And then Dr. Mahajan? Can we unmute Dr. Parikh, please? Yes.
I think Dr. Joshi rightly pointed out in the beginning that the situation is very fluid and dynamic. Our thinking, our opinions need to change with the data that is available. There will not be a perfect vaccine, but we do not need a perfect vaccine. We need a vaccine which is about 60% efficacious or effective. And most of these vaccines exceed that to enable us to get herd immunity, because let us never forget that some people have attained a certain degree of immunity by virtue of infection. And cumulatively, if about 70% immunity is obtained, then, not the number of people getting infected drops. So we're really not looking for a perfect vaccine. There never will be a perfect vaccine. But that doesn't allow us to cut corners and therefore come up with an imperfect vaccine.
What should we do right now? All right, Dr. Joshi, Dr. Mahajan, last words to both of you. What should happen urgently right now? Dr. Mahajan? Let's come back to testing as well. Let's come back to testing.
Yeah. See, testing, the capacity that we have, it's not going to get ramped up very quickly, at least in the private sector, because of price caps. It just doesn't make financial sense to buy new machines, hire more people, and ramp up the testing. This, I'm telling you the truth. It's not going to happen. Point number 2, I think if we look at the capacity of vaccine production of the 2 companies that we have in the country, we will not be able to meet the targets that the government has set for itself. By July, you're not going to be able to vaccinate 30 crore people. And so we have to look at alternative sources. I'm sure the Sputnik 5 hopefully has gone through the right rigors of a trial, and it's safe and efficacious. But at the same time, I said this probably in December, we'll need a bouquet of vaccines. We cannot just depend on 2 of these. And we need to vaccinate as quickly as possible. I mean, our labs can be used as centers where vaccination can be done. Today, I was seeing on a channel where there were huge lines, crowds for vaccination. Those vaccination centers can become centers of spread of the disease. So we need to actually spread it out further, reach closer to the people, and bring in more of the doses so that we vaccinate as quickly as possible. England, like you told me, has opened up today just because they were able to vaccinate very quickly. Of course, it's a tiny nation compared to ours, but we need to actually go about it very, very quickly.
Absolutely.
As quickly
Joshi. Absolutely. Dr. Joshi, last word. We cannot manage with just 2 vaccines. We can't manage even with just 3.
Yeah, we need to have more and more vaccination done. There is no doubt about it. Maybe that a suitable vaccine, I would not label X or Y, but a suitable vaccine which is manufactured outside our country may be permitted so that we can meet the needs of the people of the country, rich as well as poor.
Absolutely. And I think it's time to not be suspicious of market forces, that your public health system has inequities and is broken, is a long haul repair project. At this moment, you cannot treat the private sector with suspicion because they have the speed and efficiency which needs to be married with the kind of commitment that government hospitals like Sion have shown at the front line. And I think we need to bring those two together to work together. Thank you, Dr. Joshi, Dr. Parikh and Dr. Mahajan. One always learns a lot from talking to all three of you. We will be on the road in Maharashtra tomorrow reporting from ground zero, and we hope to bring you first-hand perspectives on what's actually happening in the epicenter of COVID, the hotspot really at the moment. So more from there. And in the meantime, thank you for watching and see you tomorrow. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.